NHL's richest team in the league. How can they be the worst team in the National Hockey League? They got enough money to win the Stanley Cup for the next 6 years, but yet they choose to take the back road, put this big show on here in Toronto, play their fans like a bunch of fools. But for some reason, the fans keep coming back. All they got to do is boo them, continue to throw the Toronto jerseys on the ice, and I guarantee it, things are going to change in Toronto. Toronto had the Stanley Cup something like 4 years in a row after '93. They lost every time in the semifinals. They had it in '93. They had the coach, Pat Burns, God love him. They had the world's greatest player, Dougie Gilmour. The Toronto Maple Leafs in '93 literally had a dynasty. But they never came back ever since that. In my opinion, the Toronto Maple Leafs is just playing the fans of Toronto, the city of Toronto, like a bunch of simps, so they can rake in all their money, their hard-working earned money. Cost me a sin to see the Toronto Maple Leafs. I went in Toronto in 2011 when they played the Ottawa Senators. $260 upper bowl ticket. That just goes to show you how expensive it is getting this Scotiabank Arena. You ain't getting into no hockey game under $260. Put it that way. Start from $260 up. So just imagine how much money people got to fork forward to watch this team who's playing their own community of Toronto like a bunch of simps. They don't want to win the Stanley Cup because they make more money during the regular season than they do win the Stanley Cup. So why would you want to win the Stanley Cup for when you make more money, more millions during the regular season? And this has to change here in Toronto. It really does. I'd say they got the right coach, Mike Babcock. They got the right general manager, Brendan Shanahan. But they're missing something here. And I think I know what's wrong here. Nylander should never been re-signed back with Toronto. They should have let him go, forget about it, send him on his way, trade him off. Toronto needs a backup goalie. I always say that Toronto should have made the trade with Montreal. Let's send Nylander to Montreal. We'll take Carey Price. Carey Price needs a fresh start. And Nylander is, I don't know, ever since when Nylander was re-signed with Toronto been slipping in the numbers. They've been slipping in their points, slipping in the ratings, and people have been, they got a question mark. Why did we re-sign Nylander? I wouldn't have. I say Don Cherry was right. They caved in. Toronto caved in. They should have stuck to their guns, let Nylander go, because they would have got better, more fresh talent than what Toronto needed from what they got. I believe Toronto has what it takes to win, but they're not. But they're not even trying. They really ain't. I feel Austin Matthews is not pulling his weight around in Toronto from where it should be, because they're overpaid. They're way overpaid. I wouldn't pay them the $5-6 million a year. I wouldn't do it. The NHL, when they have their next lockout, when their contracts are with the leagues have to be renewed, I look at making salary cuts. I mean, where's these players going to go? Go overseas. Let them go. The NHL got to continue to rebuild their league like they did when they went on strike, when they missed that entire season that time. Actually, it was Guy Lafleur stated the NHL needs to go bankrupt and start over again. And you know what? Guy Lafleur was right. He's one of the world's greatest players. Trust me, he knows what he's talking about. The NHL has to continue to reconstruct itself to make itself better. The NHL is not even affordable for fans to go look at. There's the first problem. And the NHL got to stop having a rigged affair. The NHL is like the WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. It's a rigged sporting entertainment, and people actually buy these tickets to see this because people like entertainment, and entertainment sells. Today, in the new millennium, the National Hockey League is nowhere near from what it used to be back in the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s. It's nowhere near. One time in the National Hockey League, when a team was losing, they fight tooth and nail to get that puck in the net, either to tie the game or to win the game, and there'll be no, you swear to God that there was no tomorrow. Today, when a team loses, they just skate off. Oh well, the heck with it. And do you know why that happens? Because their players are so far overpaid, they're not even into the game, they're not even tuned into reality. and they're actually boring the fans who pay the high price tickets to go see these players play in the NHL. Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, Nylander. These players are overpaid. Sidney Crosby, they say he's the greatest player since Wayne Gretzky. I hate to burst your bubble, but I think Nathan MacKinnon is actually better than Sidney Crosby. Let's look at last year's Stanley Cup Finals. The Washington Capitals and the Las Vegas Golden Knights. We all knew that Ovechkin had to get his Stanley Cup win. It had to happen. It had to come. And saying no to Alex Ovechkin, saying we're not going to give you the Stanley Cup, is a lot like telling Mario Lemieux, we're not going to give you the cup, but we're going to give Wayne Gretzky the cup. Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin is a lot like the rivalry between Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. They can't go giving the Stanley Cup big pile of times to Wayne Gretzky and not give none at all to Mario Lemieux. They'll give it a big pile of times to Sidney Crosby, so now they're going to shift focus and give it to Alex Ovechkin. And the funny thing is, last year when the Las Vegas Golden Knights first came to the National Hockey League, look how great they were. Look how well advertised they were on television. A year after their Stanley Cup Finals run, they're nowhere to be heard of. You don't hear no more of them. This is what's wrong with the National Hockey League. They build these teams up so they can make money. Las Vegas, in my opinion, for them to have an NHL franchise was just common sense. Should have been done a long time ago. But you can see leagues today being pushed forward in the direction of the Stanley Cup, but they're not actually working for it. They got players that are only there because the NHL is paying them big money to promote this team, even though it doesn't have the fan support to support the franchise anymore. But we're going to push the team ahead, win the Stanley Cup, see if we can give that a boost. Look at the Arizona Coyotes, prime example. They've been struggling in Arizona ever since when they left Winnipeg. They really had been. But when you got people like Brad Marchand coming along, taking cheap shots at players, licking them above all. If that would have been the days with Bobby Orr, who would have been playing, let's say if Brad Marchand tried that on Bobby Orr, Don Cherry will even agree with this if you're watching. Bobby Orr would have smashed the face in of Brad Marchand and broke his jaw and ended Brad Marchand's career right there. Brad Marchand likes to take cheap shots at players, lick them above all, but when the players come charging at him to take his head off, he curls up like a little ball in a corner on the ice, like a little child. And that just goes to show the talent, what the hockey scouts are picking up to bringing these in the National Hockey League from the Quebec Major Junior League or the American Hockey League. This is the crap what today's hockey promoters are bringing in the National Hockey League. I think Brad Marchand's a hell of a player. He's a great player. He's an excellent player. But we can't have this idiot going around licking people and taking cheap shots. If that would have been me, I would have smashed his jaw right there and ended his career right there. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys at home would agree with this. Other great hockey talent. Nathan MacKinnon. Love him. Sidney Crosby, he's a good player, but you know what Sidney Crosby's problem was? He was overrated. The press made him bigger than what he actually was. They all said he's the next Wayne Gretzky. He's better than Wayne Gretzky. You and I all know that he is not better than Wayne Gretzky. He sure as hell is not the next Wayne Gretzky. He's not even in Gretzky's league. Rocket Richard. Imagine that. Bobby Orr. Mike Bossy. You know who my favorite players of all time is? Dougie Gilmour. I really like Dougie for some reason. He fought, he made plays, he made beautiful plays, and he scored goals. That's the kind of player that I like. Someone like Dougie Gilmour. Now, it's unfortunate his career ended when it did with the Toronto Maple Leafs. His first time back, within 5 minutes of his first shift back with the Leafs, his career ended on knee injury. Some guy from Calgary, I forget his name, but I really did. I like Doug Gilmour, I really did. Gary Bettman. I think he's a hell of a NHL commissioner for the National Hockey League, but I feel that ever since he became commissioner, ever since 1993, the Canadian teams have been struggling in the National Hockey League ever since. They took the Stanley Cup away from Toronto in 1993 when Wayne Gretzky had to have his last hurrah. Remember that? Gretzky had to have his last hurrah. The Toronto Maple Leafs, Doug Gilmour, what's his name? Osborne, Wendell Clark, Felix Potvin, Glenn Anderson, Peter Zezel. These were the greatest players in the history of the National Hockey League. The Toronto Maple Leafs in 1993 was a dynasty. And you look how Gary Bettman walked in. All right, let's pull the plug on Toronto. Let's let Gretzky get away with his splash on Gilmour's head that time. Let's screw Toronto over, put Gretzky in the finals with the Los Angeles Kings and the Montreal Canadiens, and Montreal win the Cup. Really, that Cup was designed for Gretzky, but it didn't really happen that way. And the crazy thing was, if Gary Bettman would have stayed the hell out of the way, he would have made 10 times the amount, billions and billions of dollars, because the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens would have met in the finals of the 1993 Stanley Cup playoffs, in the finals. They would have met, and Toronto had the better team in Montreal at the time, and Toronto would have beaten Montreal, and Toronto would have won their Stanley Cup in a long time, since 1968, I believe. That's how bad it is in the National Hockey League. They're not there to win. They're there to make money. They're there to make the league money. And if they can't do it, then they're not going to support this team, or they're not going to support this city of getting a franchise or winning the Stanley Cup. And in my opinion, Gary Bettman, he's doing a great job making the teams money, but the NHL today is more like the WWE wrestling, World Wrestling Entertainment. It's a scripted television sports entertainment program what the fans are now looking at. The Canadian teams have never won a Stanley Cup since 1993. From 1993 on, the odd Canadian team, the Calgary Flames, the Ottawa Senators, the Edmonton Oilers, and the Vancouver Canucks all been in the Stanley Cup finals, but they never won the Stanley Cup. The NHL has to restructure their salary cap, their salaries, make it an equal level playing field for all teams in the NHL across the Canada and the US border. But the real problem with the National Hockey Leagues, in my opinion, is it's too big. Arizona shouldn't be there. The Florida Panthers are struggling to get the arena filled. As the New York Islanders, I think they are too. We got far too many teams in the NHL. What the NHL should be doing is relocating some of their teams, or folding some of their teams, and shorten the NHL so it's more, it's not so reached out, it's not so spread out, it's not too big, and so all teams have enough room to move around so they can actually win. I believe the NHL is suffering, and do you know how bad it's suffering? I'm going to tell you something. Do you ever watch the All-Star game? Nobody's watching it. The skills competition. The NHL killed themselves during the skills competition. Because do you know why? People want to see their skills. They want to see what they're capable of. Here we got Patrick Kane. A few years back, he put a Superman cape on, he took it off, he pretended he was Superman. We don't want to see this garbage. We want to see your actual skills. We want to see what you're capable of doing. We want to see your talent. We don't want to see you playing Superman. I mean, you want to go play Superman, go to Los Angeles, or join the Los Angeles Kings and make the odd movie, and you can play Superman. Hollywood ain't too far away from Los Angeles. Actually, it's right in Los Angeles, if I'm correct. The NHL is not the NHL. It's garbage. And when you look at the NFL, it's the same thing. Super Bowl, nobody's watching. The rings are getting lower. And then you look at the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's drug on far too long. One time used to be the best of three. Maybe that's what the NHL got to do. And you know why they don't do that? Because they make more money dragging the playoffs on at the best of four, dragging on to Game 7, because that's how they make their millions. They're going to make more money doing that than they are the old way, back to the best of three. And when you look at the Stanley Cup playoffs, nobody's watching it. They're bored, they're tired of it, and nobody wants to see it no more. It's dragged on far too long, and people are just tired of it. We don't want to see the American teams win the Stanley Cup over and over and over again. We don't want to see it no more. We want it to be equal, but you ain't got that. I believe Gary Bettman means well, but in my opinion, I think it's time for him to stand aside and let somebody else take over, become commissioner of the National Hockey League, and go from there. Gary Bettman had his time. I think it's time for him to move on, but till then, I don't see the NHL progressing or ever moving forward. The Quebec Nordiques. This has been going on for a long time. The big return of the Quebec Nordiques. And do you know why they haven't returned? Because Gary Bettman doesn't want them back. And they never will be back as long as Gary Bettman's commissioner of the National Hockey League. You can bank your money on that. And do you know what else is not going to happen? Toronto will not get their second NHL franchise in Toronto either, because Gary Bettman does not want the Canadian team to move forward. Simple as that. We've been hearing over and over and over again, the Quebec Nordiques are coming back, but yet they don't. The province of Quebec spent the money, invested their money into a new stadium that's at the NHL size that can hold the NHL venue, but yet the NHL can't go back to Quebec. If the National Hockey League has a commissioner, that's not being fair and honest on both sides of the borders, Canada and the U.S., maybe Gary Bettman shouldn't be there. And the NHL only can get so big, and they're going to get to stop. I believe what they should be doing is either take the Florida Panthers or the Arizona Coyotes and move them to Quebec. And take the other one, if they want to go to Houston, all right, put them in Houston or Seattle. But I would not be expanding the National Hockey League and making it bigger with more teams. If I was the NHL Commissioner, Gary Bettman, I'd seriously look at relocating teams instead of adding teams to the National Hockey League. But I would also like the space to ensure that the city where they're going to is going to be successful for the teams in the league to move forward. But I really don't see an NHL franchise returning back to the city of Quebec. Not as long as Gary Bettman's there. And if they do come back, if they do happen to come back, I don't see the Quebec Nordiques being a reasonable Stanley Cup contender team, because Gary Bettman does not want the Canadian teams to progress and move forward in the NHL. The Canadian teams are in the NHL to struggle and suffer and slowly but surely fade out and die off and relocate to another city. But that's my opinion on the Quebec Nordiques.